Yeah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا ليجزي الله الصادقين بصدقهم ويعذب المنافقين إن شاء يتوب عليهم إن الله كان غفورا رحيما. ورد الله الذين كفروا بغيظهم لم ينالوا خيرا وكفى الله المؤمنين القتال وكان الله قويا عزيزا. وأنزل الذين ظاهروهم من أهل الكتاب من سياسيهم وقذف في قلوبهم الرعب فريقا تقتلون وتأسرون فريقا وأورثكم أرضهم وديارهم وأموالهم وأرضا لم تطئوها وكان الله على كل شيء قديرا. يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك إن كنتن تردن الحياة الدنيا وزينتها فتعالين أمتعكن وسرحكن سراحا جميلا. وإن كنتن تردن الله ورسوله والدار الآخرة فإن الله أعد للمحسنات منكن أجرا عظيما. يا نساء النبي من يأت منكن بفاحشة مبينة يضاعف لها العذاب ضعفين وكان ذلك على الله يسيرا. ومن يقنت منكن لله ورسوله وتعمل صالحا نؤتها أجرها مرتين وأعتدنا لها رزقا كريما. يا نساء النبي لستن كأحد من النساء إن اتقيتن فلا تخضعن بالقول فيطمع الذي في قلبه مرض وقلن قولا معروفا وقرن في بيوتكن ولا تبرجن تبرج الجاهلية الأولى وأقمن الصلاة وآتينا الزكاة وأطعنا الله ورسوله إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعوذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت عليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جده يا رسول الله أتعزن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوزي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جده يا رسول الله فقال السلام عليك يا جده والسلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتعزن لي أن أدخل معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا أخوتي وخليفتي وصاحب اللواء قد أذنت لك فدخل علي تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بزعتي قد أذنت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مزية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبريل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال جبريل يا ربي يتعذر لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا. فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك فهبط الأمين جبريل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبريل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم رجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبين وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة وإلى وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Please recite Surah Fatiha for all the Mu'mineen, Mu'minat. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى الحمد لله الرحمن الرحيم مالك هذا الذي أنعمت عليه غير المغضوب عليهم ولا أحد الله الصمد لم يكن له كفوا قل الله أحد الله الصمد لم يكن له كفوا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. آغوش لحد میں جب کہ جب کہ سونا ہوگا جز خاک نہ تکیہ نہ بچھونا ہوگا آغوش لحد میں جب کہ سونا ہوگا جز خاک نہ تکیہ نہ بچھونا ہوگا تنہائی میں کون ہوویگا انیس تنہائی میں کون ہوویگا انیس ہم ہوویں گے اور قبر کا کونا ہوگا آغوش لحد میں صلوات محمد محمد عجل آدم شور ماتم ہے آہو بکا ہے یا الہی یہ کیا ماجرا ہے شور ماتم ہے آہو بکا ہے یا الہی یہ کیا ماجرا ہے ایک مسافر وطن سے چلا ہے شہر بھر کس لیے رو رہا ہے رنج و حسرت جو حد سے سوا ہے ایک مریضہ کو غش آ چکا ہے غم کی ماری مصیبت زدہ ہے چھوٹا بھائی ابھی چھٹ گیا ہے اف یہ سناٹا بوجھل فضا ہے رہنمائے صداقت چلا ہے، آگے آگے رواں قافلہ ہے، پیچھے پیچھے کوئی رو رہا ہے، شہ نے ہمراہیوں سے یہ پوچھا، بولو کیا نام ہے اس جگہ کا، دوستوں کے لبوں پر یہ آیا، کربلا 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 ہے، سائیں سائیں ہوا بہ رہی ہے، ایک بہن بھائی سے کہہ رہی ہے، کون دکھیاری غم سہ رہی ہے، دیکھنا بھائی کس کی صدا ہے، کیوں قیامت بپا ہو رہی ہے، کیا ہوا ہے جو جان کھو رہی ہے، کرب سے ایسے مارو رہی ہے، جیسے بچہ بھی مر گیا ہے، سن کے شاہ امم نے بتایا، تم نے ابھی نہ پہچانا لہجہ، یہ ہے مادر ہماری عزیزہ، جن کی آواز ہی مرثیہ ہے، راستہ سارا رو کر گزارا، لب پہ فریاد تھی ہائے بابا، کس لیے ظالموں نے ستایا، میرے بچے کی تقصیر کیا ہے، شور ماتم ہے آہو بکا ہے، یا الہی یہ کیا ماجرا ہے، ایک مسافر وطن سے چلا ہے، شہر بھر کس لیے رو رہا ہے. صلوات.
محمد محمد
دریا پکیے جب کہ شہوالا نے خیمے دریا پکیے جب کہ شہوالا نے گھیرا شبیر کو گھیرا شبیر کو تب فوجے ستمارا نے لب دریا نہ اترنے دیا تب وعدہ نے یہ شبیر لگے فرمانے یہ بھی دو چار دل اب غم پا گزر جائیں گے یہ بھی دو چار اب غم پا گزر جائیں گے گر رضا حق کی ہے تو پیاسے ہی مر جائیں گے خیمے
محمد محمد
حر کی ایسی نہ کسی اور کو تقدیر ملی حر فخر کے وزن خلد کی جاگیر ملی خلد کی ایسی پر جتن کر گئے ثابت جو عمل سے اپنے پر جتن کر گئے ثابت جو عمل سے اپنے اس سے بہتر کوئی قرآن کی نہ تفسیر ملی خلد کی ایسی دیر کیوں مار دیا بچے کو ظالم تو نے تیر کیوں مار دیا بچے کو ظالم تو نے اور ملاقات نصیب شیر کی تقسیر ملی خلد کی ایسی کوئی ایک بار مدینے میں نہ پہچان سکا کوئی ایک بار مدینے میں نہ پہچان سکا قید سے چھوٹ کے جب زینب دلگیر ملی قید سے چھوٹ کے جب زینب دلگیر ملی سب ملے چھوٹ کے زندان سے سکینہ کے سوا سب ملے
محمد محمد وعجل فرجهم.
جس دم سنی امام نے صدا جس دم سنی امام نے صدا رفیق سے دیکھی وفا فرش ازاغر بیچائی برائے کینچی جو شین آغا دل بے قرار سے نکلی تڑپ کے فاطمہ زہرا مزار سے نکلی تڑپ کے فاطمہ زہرا طرف سید امم آئے نجف سے حیدر صفدر بچش میں نو آواز دی نبی نے کہ غر کو لیے وقت پہنچے شاہ تو وہ توڑتا تھا دم جس وقت پہنچے شاہ تو وہ توڑتا تھا دم سر کاٹنے کی فکر میں جو تھے وہ ہٹ گئے مغماں سے اپنے دوڑ کے حضرت لپٹ گئے مغماں سے اپنے دوڑ کے حضرت لپٹ گئے زانو پر رکھ لیا سر غروار یہ کہا بھائی حسین آیا ہے آغوش میں ذرا آنکھیں قدم پامل کے یہ بولا وہ وفا مولا غزار جان سے میں آپ پر فدا مولا غزار جان سے میں آپ پر فدا دل کے لیے زمین تک سر جھکاتے ہیں وہ لوگ خود سے میرے لینے کو آتے ہیں وہ لوگ خود سے میرے لینے کو آتے ہیں زانوں پسر گیا کہ یا شاہ بغیر محبوب کبریا ہے ادھر شہر حق ادھر ہے کون یہ معظمہ پہلو میں شگنے کہا کہ روتی ہے اما برغنس شگنے کہا کہ روتی ہے اما برغنس تو غجر تک امام دو عالم کے ساتھ ہے ماتم تیرا حسین کے ماتم کے ساتھ ہے تو غجر تک امام دو عالم کے ساتھ ہے ماتم تیرا حسین کے ماتم کے ساتھ ہے ماتم تیرا حسین کے ماتم کے ساتھ ہے جس دوست نے
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الدين عند الله الإسلام صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. A discussion on Islamic theology has been our topic. Tonight is lecture number 3. Yesterday we began our content for our Ashra by introducing the topic of Islamic theology, looking at the basic ground building principles of the religion, And as I mentioned last night, the hope and the intent is that we reconstruct the building of Islam inside of us and inside of our youth as well. And that we move away from being biological believers to organic ones, real ones, that from the ground roots up now, it is a belief inside of us. Last night we defined the term Deen. And we talked about the fact that Deen has both a lexical, lughawi, dictionary meaning, and one that is to be understood with concepts and principles. We talked about the fact that dayana in Arabic literally means to believe in something, a path, a sirat. But more importantly, I went through with all of you last night a chain of thought, the 6-link chain from fikr all the way to thought, looking at the importance of our thoughts and how they can, ultimately, if we allow them, to define who we are in this world. And we talked about the fact that entire discussion of fikr and mail and fi'l and khulq and malaka and dhat was all in order for us to understand where deen fits into this chain. And we talked about the fact that while we have 1,000+ thoughts every single day, if not more, it's those triggers of our thoughts that need to be understood. And that's where the deen comes in, a proper deen, a comprehensive deen, one that dictates every aspect and every fiber of our life, everything from our media to our family to our friends, to our hardships, to our struggles, to our tragedies, because all of that, of course, influences the way that we think. And the way that we think influences how we act. How we act, of course, makes up our akhlaq. Our akhlaq becomes who we are. Okay? That was all yesterday's discussion. Excuse me. It's very hard to talk to a camera sometimes. You don't have people around you. It becomes a challenge sometimes in a quiet room like this, and just you and the camera. So pardon me if I'm having a tough time with my voice and a little bit of my energy levels. But inshallah, this discussion that we have tonight is one that's very, very important, one that, of course, is fundamental in our discussion on this theology discussion. So tonight I want to examine a word called worldview. Now, if you have done any reading in Islamic theology, any of the Shia books, Islamic books, any sort of religion books on the idea of worldview, you will come across the idea and the notion of the word worldview. A worldview is a harmonious set of beliefs on how this world works. Essentially, the meaning of the word is built into the word itself. It's how we view the world. And as the saying goes, the way that we view the world is how we end up living in this world. And so you'll see sometimes the word worldview and religion used interchangeably inside of our books. Because ultimately the religion, whatever religion it is, presents its own version of its worldview, how it sees this world. And every major and minor system of belief has its own respective worldview. Islam is no different. Islam presents itself as a worldview, and all of you, I'm sure have come across your own sort of set of knowledge in terms of what that worldview is. But nonetheless, the word worldview you will use a lot and see a lot, and it plays a fundamental role in this discussion on Islamic theology. Now, I want to go through a little bit of the reality of the worldview, because when you think about individuals, I'll give you an example, okay? An individual who sees this world to be everything, meaning there is no hereafter, there's no grave, there's no afterlife. They'll live their life accordingly. A person who sees this world to be nothing but a bridge, a transition, a temporary world, a finite world, will live their life accordingly. A person who might see a little bit of both will live their life accordingly. Nonetheless, your worldview dictates how you live in this world. And so it becomes a fundamental, critical discussion. Let's open it up a little bit tonight and in our discussion on Islamic theology. I'm using these building blocks. You have, I'm sure that you have experienced an ashra with me here and there when I examine an ashra in Muharram 10 days, as a flight, okay? as a flight. And you know that the airplane does not start off in the air. Okay, it backs off from the gate. It finds a runway. It taxis down the runway. It takes off, finds at its elevation, then cruises, and then of course begins to descend down to its destination. That is the flight pattern or the flight path of this one of any flight, really. My ashras, the way I design my ashras, for lack of a better word, is exactly that. Okay, the idea is to get to a destination, and that destination is to rethink the way that we think about God and religion. That is the ultimate thesis of my ashra with all of you in Milton at Lady Fatimah. Okay, I want us to look at God through a different lens, look at Deen and religion through a different lens, specifically my young guys who are listening right now. But we have to now understand, and right now we're backing off from the gate, finding the runway. So these fundamental discussions of Deen and thought and worldview and epistemology that we'll have tomorrow, these are all part and parcel of the flight pattern. But the ultimate destination, we haven't even taken off yet, right? We'll take off, inshallah. But first, these initial discussions that might be a little bit dry and a little bit academic, but I think it's important that we do so. Because reality is, and I say that a lot, I know, one of the tactics of shaitan against us is this idea that he infiltrates our image of God. He makes us believe that God is someone who cannot be satisfied. No matter what I do, it can never please him. He's a God of wrath, a God of anger, a God of punishment. And we have to change that about ourselves. We really, truly do. I think sometimes to a certain extent, the Christian church has it right. The Christian church believes in a God of love, albeit sometimes they go a little bit too far, where they strip God of his adalat and his justice. But nonetheless, they see God to be a loving, nurturing God. And that love and that nurture is what motivates them to they themselves be loving and nurturing. We sometimes, as Muslims, we use fear of God as a motivator, especially with our kids, that if you don't do this, God will do this to you, right? And that fear, we're hoping, will shake them to do the right thing. The problem with the fear is that you've only introduced him as a God worthy of fear, a monster-like figure, na'udhu billah, voiding anybody of a discussion on his mercy, his rahmah, his compassion, his love, his forgiveness, all those beautiful, beautiful jamali characters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, characteristics of Allah that sometimes we lose sight of. After a while, when the kid's 18, 19 years old, he won't want to, or she won't want to worship a God that has been always been told since day number one that he wants nothing but to punish you. Anyways, my point is that that's my thesis of this ashra. Let's change the way that we see God. When we change the way that we see God, everything around us, from a pandemic to, I don't know, the economy, to tragedy, will end up dealing with these things a little bit better. Okay? So these initial discussions now that I have with all of you, first, second, third, fourth Muharram, we're all kind of taxiing on the runway, going to take off. Nearing the ending or the second half of the Ashra from 6 Muharram onwards is really when we get into the crux of our discussion, inshallah. Before that, stay with me, be patient with me. These are essential building block discussions. Now, the worldview, harmonious beliefs, every major system has them. Now, any accepted worldview has to have certain realities built within it. The main ones that Agha Misbah talks about in his book is that the worldview, whatever worldview you accept or whatever worldview you're presenting as a religion, that worldview of yours has to be able to answer 3 main questions: origin, purpose, and destination. Where did I come from? What am I doing here? Where am I going? Okay. Example I've often given is that you enter a shopping mall and you look for a map of the directory of the stores, looking for a big dot that says you are here. When you understand where you are, you'll know where you're going, right? You'll also know exactly where you started from. This is where I parked the car. Make sure we come back to this exit or gate number 6. But from here, if I want to go shoe shopping, upstairs to the right near the food court, blah, blah, blah. That only happens when you know exactly where you came from, what you're doing here, and of course, where you're ending up. Small, mundane, simple examples, I'm sorry, but also for our life. People who wander around aimlessly, purposeless, without any direction are people who are lost because they don't understand their origin, their purpose, and their destination. Any worldview must be able to answer that question. Now, in the world of Islamic theology, very beautifully, very, very beautiful. At this point, when my teacher mentioned this to me in the Hausa, was a beautiful point. He said that the Deen of Islam is such a beautiful religion that inside its Islamic theology, the three bases of the answers of these three questions, origin, purpose, destination, are answered by Tawheed, Nabuwat, and Ma'ad, the belief in one God, prophethood, and the day of resurrection. Right? Meaning Tawheed is our origin, Nabuwat is our purpose, Ma'ad or Qiyamah or Day of Judgment is our destination. And those three are essential if you want to be considered a Muslim. In fact, if you reject any of those three, you are ikhraj, you are now exited, you are rejected from the deen. That's how fitri and how much of a beautiful worldview Islam has, that these three major questions that all human beings will ask themselves are answered by the three roots of the religion. Now, a lot of you might ask, as brackets, how is Nabuwat purpose of life? Well, prophethood, the actual, the actual sending of prophets, هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة when كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. These are people who were in utter darkness. The prophets sent down, Allah sent down the prophets to relay the signs, to purify them, to teach them. All those things are what? Are the purpose of this life that we have in this world. So sending down the prophets and by extension the imams, we now understand what we're supposed to do in this world. Anyways, so these three main questions now have to be understood. Okay? And they have been presented by Islam to be three of the major roots of Islam. Okay. Now, what I really want to get into is how does worldview now affect my everyday life? And this is where I'm going to break it down into two main areas. Follow me for a moment here. So I want you to imagine the worldview is up here, whatever worldview you might have. If you see the world to be the end-all and be-all, that this world is not limited, it is the only world, there's no hereafter, there's no barzakh, there's no grave, right? And how that affects everything from our reason to our thought to our comprehension. Okay? So worldview affects your reason, your thought, your comprehension. Your aql, your fikr, and your dark, right? To dark something, to comprehend something. On this side, of course, it also affects your aql, your intellect, your knowledge, and of course, after that, your action, right? So your aql, your ilm, your amal. All of these six things that are crucial for human development are all affected by your worldview. If I was to draw you a chart, I would say worldview on top of here. It breaks down into reason, thought, comprehension, intellect, knowledge, and action. And these three now break down worldview. And then they go back up and they once again rebuild the worldview. Let me explain that in a moment. That's a little bit confusing there. Sorry. What I meant to say was that if the proper worldview is there, however you view the world, okay, remember, I'll give you the example, right? A person who views this world to be heaven and hell will live their life like it's heaven and hell. A person who realizes that everything that I go through in this world is temporary, there is a permanent, eternal world waiting for me, will live their life accordingly. Okay, ask yourself, imagine if there was no heaven and hell, there was no grave, there was no after, there was no barzakh, there was no day of judgment, would we from tomorrow now live a different life? Of course we would. Absolutely we would. Sometimes what stops us from doing what we want to do and stopping our nafs from committing the sin that we want to commit is the fact that we have a day that will be held accountable. Okay? So that affects how we reason and how we understand things. It affects our thinking. Think about it. Everything now becomes, if I don't have it at that moment, I'm never going to have it, right? So this slogan that sometimes is given to our youth, that you do you live only, you only live once, bro. Don't hold back. Don't let anyone stop you. Blah blah blah. All these things to me are horrible pieces of advice, and it's in this It's in this Western culture, in this R&B hip-hop culture that is seen everywhere, in TV shows, on the radio, in podcasts, on your phone, where, you know what, you do you. If you want to do it, do it. Don't worry about consequences. That's a person whose worldview is that this world of 65, 70 years is the entire world. There's nothing left beyond this. Whereas the sacrificial nature of Islam, to sacrifice your nafs, to fight your urges, to battle your tendencies, is all with the hopes that, look, you may not get what you want from the luxuries of this world, but there's luxuries that are beyond this world waiting for you in the hereafter. Right? So the way that we think and comprehend things is affected by our worldview. On this side, how we act, our decisions, our practical lifestyle, day-to-day decisions are absolutely affected by the way that we view the world. And the beauty of the worldview is that it's constantly developing. Think about all of my respective elders out there. Think about how you viewed the world when you were 15, how you view the world when you were 35, and how you view the world now when you're in your 50s, for example. Think about my youth right now who are in their mid-20s to late 20s, how you viewed the world when you were a teenager. Right? I mean, you were oblivious to many, many things that now are made known to you. If you knew them back then, you would view the world differently. Think about how you thought and the decisions you made when you were 15, 16, and how you make them now that you're in your 30s. Right? The worldview is constantly evolving. That's why Imam Jaffri Sadiq ﷺ says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, that either you are learning or you are teaching or you are useless. Because that learning and teaching constantly what strengthens and evolves that worldview inside of you. Remember, that worldview then again now affects your comprehension, your thought, your action, your knowledge, your aql, all those various components of the human being. That's why as the person gets older, as we get more mature and we view the world a little bit differently, everything changes from the way that we think to how we understand things to how we even act. It all goes back to worldview. It all goes back to worldview. Okay. And that's part of the reason why, the term baligh is so important in Islam. Baligh or baligha, when a sister turns 9 or a brother turns, maximum 15, they are baligh. They have a whole bulugh program. What is this bulugh program? Besides a physical change in your body, what's more important is that you begin to understand the worldview. It triggers the process of the intellectual development of the human being, not just the idea that now the boy has a deeper voice and a little bit of a mustache, right? And he gets taller, for example. No, that's not just it. It's also an intellectual development as well. And that intellectual development is critical for us to understand the proper worldview. Okay. Now, a lot of things affect our worldview. A number of things affect our worldview. And part of that, worldview is the fact that, we're affected by, like I said, everything I talked about yesterday. Right? So we can see there's a constant, think about the fact that, the agenda of some of these media outlets, the agenda of some of these shows, right? The agenda of some of these ads, social media as a tool. What is happening here overall is that there's an attack on today's youth and their worldview. They want to see everything to be instant. Your worldview should be instant. That's the beauty of it. Okay? So within worldview, you have epistemology and you have ideology. Let me explain that as well, very quickly. Epistemology are those sides that talk about reason and thought and comprehension. Those three belong to epistemology. It's a big word. Inshallah, we'll have an entire majlis tomorrow night on epistemology. Epistemology, very briefly, as a spoiler alert for tomorrow, is the idea that it's not what we know, it's how we know what we know. The tools of my knowledge. What am I using for knowledge? Whereas ideology is exactly that. How we act, how we think, our knowledge, all that is ideology, school of thought, okay? So the difference between us, let's say, and a Sunni brother, between us and a Christian brother, a Jewish brother, is our knowledge, is our action, whether it's our salat, or the way that we fast, for example, or our hajj. All that is on this side of the equation, which is our ideology. Okay? Now, so you can see the worldview is critical in the fact that it affects everything. Everything from the how we think in this world to how we act in this world. Okay? Now, how does one build someone's worldview? Through discussions like this, through theology, through Islamic theology. Okay? And it's important that we, we take this moment to understand that at this moment now, where there is so much happening right now in the world, that we really have to go back and revisit this worldview. I oftentimes give this example. I'll give it here as well. We live in a quote-unquote smart world, right? It's debatable. Our devices are smart. I don't know about us as humans, but our devices have progressed for sure. Our phones are smarter and our cars are smarter. But the human being, many can argue, has regressed. Inside the smart world process are the phones that we have, the smartphones that we have. I remember back then when I was, growing up in Toronto, of course. I don't want to date myself, but I have to, I guess. We would buy a computer, big tower like this, and attach the monitor, turn on the power button, and there'd be a black screen and a cursor blinking at the top left, waiting for you to install the operating system, be it Windows-based or DOS-based way back then. And those big, floppy disks that look like, like squares with like a coaster in the middle. I know, my youth are like, what are you talking about? I know, I sound very dinosaur-like, I understand. Anyways, so you would bring home the tower from the store, it would be blank, you would install the operating system inside of it, and choose whatever you want to do. Now that doesn't happen. You bring home an iPad from the store. If you turn it on and there's a black screen, you'll return it. There's already a pre-installed software inside that iPad. All you have to do is that whenever Apple says, you know what, update your software, you update the software every so often. If you don't update the software, the apps won't end up working. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has already given us a pre-installed version of the Deen inside of our system, called the fitrat, and we'll talk about the fitrat in a couple of nights. But we're already programmed to believe in a proper worldview, in a proper Islamic worldview. We've been programmed to do so. The problem is that while Apple forces updates on your devices, God doesn't force you updates on his software. We have to update the software by ourselves. So I ask myself, when's the last time we revisited the concept of these concepts inside of us? The last time, I remember talking about Islam and Deen and Allah when I was 16, 17 years old maybe, in Sunday school, in madrasa, every Sunday. Ever since then, it's kind of been, okay, whatever I knew back then, I know now. There has to be an update. And these discussions are what? Are updates. Are updates. Now that we're a little bit older and we've lived our life a little bit longer and we've experienced so many things, now we can go ahead and do what? We can really, truly go ahead and experience that worldview properly. So this is an ongoing discussion for worldview. And one that we need to constantly revisit, especially when there are so many attacks happening by others, by other systems towards our youth. Okay. Now, while there are many different types of worldviews, there's essentially only two major ones. And one of the purposes behind this this year in Muharram that I've chosen for Milton, for Lady Fatimah, is that I really want us to prove together, we're using our intellect, no hadiths, no verses of the Quran, which of these two is the proper worldview. The first worldview is celestial in nature. Meaning what? They believe in an atheist point of view. a limited material-based worldview. This world is nothing but matter. Matter is going to be is finite. Therefore, this will perish. Okay? The origin of this universe was nothing but a bang, and gases came about, and etc., etc. All of you know the actual view. The other worldview is divine in nature, immaterial in nature, spiritual, ilahi, deeni in nature, that believes in a higher metaphysical power to be the initial point of this universe. Okay, so two major worldviews that are combating since day number one. One is one that the atheist believes in. One is one that the God-fearing believes in. Now, there might be others in between here and there, minor ones, major ones, but these essentially are the two major ones. Now, my question is, which one is accurate? Don't simply tell me that, oh, it has to be divine. Let's prove it. Let's prove it together using our intellect and our logic. Let's not simply regurgitate what we've been told since day number one. That's important, and we thank our parents every single day for that. But now I think it's high time that we move from biological to organic, to actual believing Muslims, where we actually have a base. We'll debate a Wahhabi on Ghadir, we'll debate a Wahhabi on Karbala, we'll debate a Wahhabi on Ismat of the Imams, infallibility, but I don't know if we can debate an atheist on God or religion. And that's a problem for me. Because there's a lot of money being poured into the atheist movement today. They have blogs. You can see it sometimes indirectly, inside of certain shows. The ridiculing nature of those who are pious, for example, right? All these things are there, right? Church being a place that no one wants to go to in the shows. A person of God looked down upon as somebody who's not real. All these things are there, and it's a very sublime message that they send our youth, that religion is outdated, religion is prehistoric. This worldview has to be something that 2020 fits. And Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayhi has a very beautiful discussion on this that I want to mention here. He says this entire discussion, and this is in his book called Shia. This entire discussion on old, outdated Sharia, blah, blah, blah. You look to replace something that's outdated, that has a start and end time, that is matter-based. For example, your car gets rusty, your car breaks down. Over time, your car needs to be replaced. Your house starts to creak, your house starts to leak, your house starts to get old. Your clothes don't fit, your clothes are ripped, your clothes get dirty, etc., etc., etc. Those are things that can be seen in the material world that have a limited beginning and a limited end. Those things can be outdated, those things can be replaced, those things need to be changed. But when we talk about something like divine intervention, spirituality, worldview, Deen, immaterialness, those things don't have a start time and an end time. Those things don't erode with time. Because it's based on the fitrat of the insan, the innate disposition of the human being. And that is something that only develops with time. It does not get old with time. So sometimes I hear people, and I mentioned this, a couple of years back at the JCC community, that people will say to me that if the Sharia came down in 2020, it would be different. Hijab wouldn't be wajib, taqlid wouldn't be wajib, khums doesn't make sense, right? It's an outdated, prehistoric, needs to be changed Sharia from 1400 years ago, and that's just not the case at all. The Sharia was born based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet and the intellect. All three of them are universal. The Quran is a miracle that is based on the fact that until the Day of Judgment it's a miracle. The Sunnah and the path of the Holy Prophet, he left behind a lifestyle that even 1400 years later we can abide by, and we should abide by. And the intellect, of course, is an inner guide of every human being. So my point is that in this discussion on the worldview, we have to stop and ask ourselves, where did I come from? What am I doing here? And where am I going? Without that purpose, it's not going to make sense. Look, the example I'll give you is a GPS. It's a very simple example. When you are in your car on your driveway going somewhere for the first time, What do? You pop in the address into your GPS, and then you hit start. It maps out the entire journey for you. Turn left, turn right, blah, blah, blah. If you make a left instead of a right, or you miss an exit, it does what? Rerouting, rerouting, rerouting. It will reroute to you 50 times if you make 50 wrong turns. And it will keep rerouting you provided that you don't change the destination address in your app, in your GPS. It will take you all the way back to the point of deviation. If you took a left instead of a right, sometimes you have to take 3 more lefts or 3 more rights to get to the spot where you took the wrong turn. But never will the GPS sit there and shut down and say, look, that's 50 wrong turns. Forget it, buddy. You don't want to go. You're wasting my time. Goodbye. Never does that. This development of the worldview, if our journey and our purpose is God, to know God, to worship God, to please God, then God also will reroute us 1,000 times. If we are figuring things out for the first time this Muharram, then he will, just like that app won't get tired of rerouting you, he also won't get tired of rerouting you. Provided we don't do what? We don't change him in our destination field. He is our destination. Everything that we do to get to him. If that is not going to change, he will reroute, reset, restart, turn left, turn right, make a U-turn, create a different path, whatever the case may be. But just don't change that destination to be anything but G-O-D. That worldview is important. How we view the world is essential. Imam Raza alayhi salatu wasalam says this world is a bridge, and a fool builds homes on bridges. Builds homes on bridges. Meaning what? That this bridge is not worthy, it's not able, it's not strong enough to carry an entire house. You would not build a home on a bridge. That bridge is meant to go from one area to another, and that's it. This is not a permanent abode. Those people who understand that, they live their life accordingly. But those who don't, they don't. And they end up now seeking for something that isn't there. And inshallah, in a couple of nights, we'll talk about the unlimited and perfection. And how sometimes the Western world has it wrong. And we see the effects of it in today's athlete and today's celebrity. Inshallah, that's in a couple of days. But regardless, we have to understand that part of the process of Islamic theology is to build the proper worldview. To understand, to view this world properly. Imam Jaffri Sadiq, one last hadith and then Musa'ib. Imam Jaffri Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. He says that the path to ubudiyat and subservience goes through 4 different relationships. One is you and Allah, of course. How do you view Allah? Is Allah the master, or is he your slave, God forbid? Or is he my slave, God forbid? That I only talk to him when I want something? If he doesn't give it to me right away, I complain? That's one. And that's a whole different discussion. Each relationship has 7 different principles to it. If you remember my discussion last year in Milton on the whiteboard, I talked about the 7 principles of what? Of a family, of a successful family. It comes from this hadith. Okay? The first is you and God. The second is you and others. How are you with others? This whole idea of haqqun nas I talked about 2 nights ago in the opening majlis of our discussion. That if you're going to go ahead and host a house majlis in this Muharram and Safar, make sure that because of you, someone else doesn't get sick, God forbid. You are responsible as a host. Number 3 is you and your amal. How do you see your actions? Are your actions sufficient? Are they deficient? Are you working towards making them better? Are you ridding them of takabbur and riyah and ego and narcissism? And the final one, he says, Imam Sadiq, is you and this world. How do you view this world? How do you see it? If you see this world to be everything, then you'll live your life accordingly. If you see this world to be nothing but that bridge that Imam Hussain talks about, then you'll live your life accordingly. A worldview is essential. Building a worldview is extremely important. We'll build the worldview in the next few nights. Tomorrow we'll look at epistemology. What are the various routes to take? Before that, we'll talk about the fact that why should I even entertain this idea of the Deen? Tomorrow, inshallah, we'll do that. But tonight, it being the 2nd of Muharram, or possibly the night of the 2nd of Muharram. We remember that moment that Imam Hussain now has what? Has arrived on the plains of Karbala. I sometimes wonder if we ever stop and think about this journey from the 28th of Rajab, Safar Imam Hussain, all the way to the 2nd of Muharram. 6 months, almost 6 months. Right? We look at the idea of all of Safar, all of the month of Ramadan, all of Zul Qa'dah, Shawwal, all of Zul Qa'dah, all of Zul Hijjah. Right? So 5 months and some odd days. 5 months. Where they pitched up tents, how they pitched up tents. You know, I went, and I don't mean to compare. I went camping a couple of nights ago. I took the family up north a little bit. We pitched up some tents. We slept, you know, in the tent for 2 nights. Right? It was beautiful. It was amazing. But the amount of work to pitch up that tent and then to put that tent down, to create food. You know, fire and bring food, and we didn't have a kitchen, nothing. We're outdoors. It's just us and the elements. That's it. And, you know, I just remember my wife telling me, you know, imagine now Imam Hussein's journey. This is 2 nights in luxury and luxurious land. 28th of Rajab he left. 2nd of Muharram now he arrives with small kids, with women, with men. It's not easy. All this for the Deen. All this for the Deen. That was their sacrifice. What will be our sacrifice this Muharram? In that desert heat, on horseback, on camelback, I don't know how he did it. 2nd of Muharram, the books tell us that he's riding on the horse. He comes across this desert plain in the northern area of Iraq, and his horse stops. Some books say that Imam Hussain changed his horse 7 different times. All 7 of them would not move from where they were the moment that they hit this land. I think about a horse not moving sometimes, and my heart goes to the day of Ashura. Imam Hussain finally, now it's his time to go and sacrifice his life. Bibi Zainab mounts him on the horse. He's about to now go into the Maidan of Karbala to fight the enemy. The horse doesn't move. Imam Hussain whispers in the ear of his Zul-Jannah of mine, I know you're tired. You've been going from morning till now, back and forth, back and forth. One last zahmat, one last effort. Just drop me in the Maidan of Karbala and your zahmat is over. The horse wouldn't move. The horse wouldn't move. Anything he tried, the horse wouldn't move. The book said the horse put his head down, one tear rolling down his face, almost as if to say, Mola, I'm not tired, and I would sacrifice my whole life for you. I would love to go towards the Maidan of Karbala, but your 4-year-old Sakina is clutching my leg, asking me where you're taking my Baba. The horse moves, the horse does not move. 2nd of Muharram, they arrive in this land. Imam Hussain gets off. Ask the Bani Asad tribe, what's the name of this land that we are standing on right now? Someone says Nainawa. Someone says Shattul Farat, an old man, they say from the back. Someone says Mawla, my Ajdad, my forefathers used to call this place Karbala. Imam Hussain says that's it. He heard the name Karbala. He says, Abbas, pitch up the tents, set up the families. This is where we will shed our blood. This is the ground of Karbala. And then Imam Hussain did something very ajib that I don't know why he did it, but he first approached the men of the Bani Asad tribe and says, there's going to be a battle here and our bodies will be killed. If you can, all of you just bury us one by one. And then Imam Hussain pitched up a tent and spoke to the women behind that partition. If your men are not able to bury us, all of you collectively now dig one grave and place our bodies inside that grave. He then went so far to go to the children of the Bani Asad. If your fathers and your mothers are not able to bury us, then all of you pick up the khak of Karbala with your small masoom hands and drop it on our bodies. Why, Mola, the need for you to arrange for your own burial when somebody passes away in our community? The last thing the family needs to remind anybody of is to bury my father, bury my mother, bury my husband. It's a given. The moment the news of death happens here, arrangements for burial happens over here. But this is the grandson of the Holy Prophet. Why did he need to go 3 different groups to make sure, please bury us, please bury us, please bury us? Because maybe he knew that on Asri Ashur, even after separating the head from the body, Umar ibn Saad now asked for 10 different horses to come and trample the body of Hussein. One Mal'un says that when my horse trampled the body of Hussein, I could hear the cracking of his ribs. Imam Hussein knew that for 3 days on that hot sand, his body would be left there unburied without even a pinch of sand on that body. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our qaleel ibadat, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our grief and our gham. We ask you, Allah, to weaken the hands of the enemies of humanity, to strengthen the mustaz'afin. And finally, Allah, our dua is one, to make us worthy and isqabil of the dhuhur of Imam al-Zamana when he comes, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. بنت علی نے مجھ کو چادر بنا لیا ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. کرتے ہیں رشک مجھ پر کوثر کے بھی کنارے. زینب کے سر میں نے 2 سال ہیں گزارے. میرا ہر ایک ذرہ ہر ظلم کا گواہ ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. اکبر جوان قاسم غازی سے چاند تارے. زین العبان میری آغوش میں اتارے. یعنی لہو نبی کا مجھ میں ملا ہوا ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. روتی ہوں یاد کر کے وہ بے کسی کا منظر. مولا چھپا رہے تھے مجھ میں وہ لاش اصغر. اس دن سے آج تک نہ مجھ کو سکون ملا ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. میں خاک کربلا ہوں، رتبہ میرا جدا ہے. شہدائے کربلا کے زخموں کو میں نے چوما زہرا کی بیٹیوں کے قدموں کو میں نے چوما اس واسطے ہی میری تاثیر میں شفا ہے میں خاک کربلا ہوں رتبہ میرا جدا ہے میں خاک کربلا ہوں رتبہ میرا جدا ہے اکبر کی لاش پر جب شبیر جا رہے تھے اٹھتے تھے بیٹھتے تھے اور لڑکھڑا رہے تھے منظر وہ ابھی میری آنکھوں میں پھر رہا ہے میں خاک کربلا ہوں رتبہ میرا جدا ہے میں خاک کربلا ہوں رتبہ میرا جدا ہے اے زائرین مولا چلنا یہاں سنبھل کر قرآن فاطمہ کا بکھرا ہوا ہے مجھ پر نہ جانے کس جگہ پر کس کا لہو گرا ہے میں خاک کربلا ہوں رتبہ میرا جدا ہے میں خاک کربلا ہوں رتبہ میرا جدا ہے یا حسین
صلی علی محمد محمد آدم
علی اکبر بھیا علی اکبر بھیا علی اکبر بھیا علی اکبر سغرا نے یہ خط اکبر کو لکھا کیسے ہو میرے پیارے بھیا بچھڑے ہوئے عرصہ بیت گیا کب تک یہ بہن دیکھے رستا جب گھر کو پرندے جاتے ہیں کیا ہم بھی تمہیں یاد آتے ہیں جب گھر کو پرندے جاتے ہیں کیا ہم بھی تمہیں یاد آتے ہیں لو قاصد سغرا گھر سے چلا لکھا ہے بتاؤ اے بھیا اب تک نہ خیال آیا میرا کیا ایسی ہوئی ہے مجھ سے خطا کیا ایسے روٹھ کے جاتے ہیں کیا ہم بھی تمہیں یاد آتے ہیں جب گھر کو پرندے جاتے ہیں کیا ہم بھی تمہیں یاد آتے ہیں سب چھوڑ گئے ہم کو تنہا کس حال میں ہوں کیا تم کو پتا بیمار کو دے اب کون دوا آ جاؤ جو تم میں پاؤ شفا جب چین سے سب سو جاتے ہیں کیا ہم بھی تمہیں یاد آتے ہیں جب گھر کو پرندے جاتے ہیں کیا ہم بھی تمہیں یاد آتے ہیں جب بالی سکینہ اور اصغر ملتے ہیں گلے تم سے ہنس کر اور ساتھ میں اماں اور بدر بس اتنا بتا بھیا اکبر سب گھر میں ہنستے ہنساتے ہیں کیا ہم بھی تمہیں یاد آتے ہیں جب گھر کو پرندے جاتے ہیں کیا ہم بھی تمہیں یاد آتے ہیں
صلی علی محمد محمد آدم
تمام مومنین اور مومنات سے گزارش ہے کہ متوجہ زیارت ہو جائیں
السلام علیک یا نبی اللہ، السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا حجت اللہ، السلام علیک یا باعث الہدی، السلام علیک یا حبیب اللہ، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا ابا عبد الحسین، السلام علیک یا ابن رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا ابن امیر المؤمنین وابن سید الوسیم، السلام علیک یا ابن فاطمة الزہراء سیدۃ نساء العالمین، السلام علیک یا مولاي وعلى انصارک المستشہدین، معک جمیعا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا غریب الغرباء، السلام علیک یا معین الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام علیک یا مغیث الشیعۃ والزوار فی یوم الجزاء، السلام علیک یا انیس النفوس، السلام علیک ایہا المدفون بعرض توس، السلام علیک وعلی آبائک السبع وابنائک الاربع ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا صاحب العصر والزمان، الامان الامان الامان، السلام علیک یا خلیفۃ الرحمن، السلام علیک یا امام الانس والجان، السلام علیک یا شریک القرآن، السلام علیک یا قوم الکفر والطغیان، السلام علیک یا دافع الظلم والعدوان، عجل اللہ تعالی فرجک وسهل اللہ مخرجک وجعلنا من انصارک ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔ سب مل کر دعا امام زمانہ پڑھتے ہیں۔ اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، اللہم قول ولیک حجت ابن الحسن صلواتک علیہ وعلی آبائہ فی ہذہ الساعۃ وفی کل ساعۃ ولیاً وحافظاً وقائداً وناصراً ودلیلاً وعینا حتی تسکنہ ارضک طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين۔ اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم۔